I'm Mike Frey, and this is my lovely wife Eileen. We're both World War II veterans. Eileen was in the Army, and I was in the Navy. So I'd like to go out on a limb and say that I'd like to bet that Eileen and I are the only World War II couple veterans in Verona, right? Well, I don't know about the area, but I'd say in Verona. I guess we can start with a little history of what I can give you, being that I've lived in Verona, I guess, almost 87 years, so I pretty much know the town. Eileen has only been here since '52.
Well, we bought the house
in '52. But we've, in January of this year, coming up, we've been married 65 years.
Wow.
So we've been a team for quite a while. I like to start out, I live on Linden Avenue, and Linden Avenue is right out here to my right. And presently my house number is 212. When we first moved here and all, we were number 8. Linden Avenue started at the Peckman River, which is down to my left, just down here, and it started there, up. I was number 8, and it ran up to Fairview Avenue. It wasn't until 1924 that the bridge opened up and Linden Avenue was extended up to Route 23. And that, Route 23, Pompton Avenue, Newark Pompton Avenue, it was known as also. There were very few houses up there from what I can recall at that time. But after they opened up the bridge and the upper end of Linden Avenue, the eastern end developed, at one time we had a laundry on the corner of Derwent Street and Linden Avenue in the Brook. There was a large laundry there run by a family called Hafer, the Hafer family. And they ran that laundry there. I don't know exactly when the laundry closed, but at one time they closed the laundry and they moved to a little store up on the intersection of Route 23 and Bloomfield Avenue. And they had their own little store, and I think they sent their laundry out. But I guess the reason they closed was that the water flow in the Peckman River wasn't sufficient to keep the laundry going, and they closed it. But that's 1924. Another thing with Linden Avenue, when they did open up Linden Avenue, I can give you stories in the 1930s because I went into the Navy in 1939. So my history on Linden Avenue will be for the 1930 period. When they opened up Linden Avenue, we used to have pretty good winters in the 30s. And during the winters, when we had the good snows, they would block Linden Avenue off. And we would start up at Elmwood Road, and the sled would come all the way down. And the thing at that time was to see how far you could get, or how close you could get to Grove Avenue. All the big shots would get up and start up there at Elmwood Road with their flexible flyers and their bobsleds and see who could set the new record. And you had 3 different levels there. And we would have a large bonfire in the big 50-gallon drums. There'd be a fire at the bottom of the hill there at Derwent Street. And up on the top of the hill at Elmwood Road, there'd be another one. And the younger children would start their ride at Cumberland Avenue. There was a nice ride down, and they'd try to make the brook, or Peckman River as they call it. They would try to do that. But the younger guys, the 13, 14, 15-year-olds, they would take the trip up to Elmwood Road and see if they could set a new record. So that's the history of Linden Avenue. When we had the snow, if you want to shift out to Bloomfield Avenue, you're in the winter period now, and you mentioned something about someone saying how they enjoyed the trolley line. That was the only transportation we had. There were no bus lines at that time. It was strictly the trolley, the 29 trolley that ran from Newark up to Caldwell. Central Avenue and Bloomfield Avenue. There's a bank at that location now. That was the turnaround. The trolley went that far, and they would turn around and head back down to Newark. And with the winters were pretty severe then, and I always remember it, they had what they called a work car trolley. And in the winters, they had a large brush that's about 4 foot high that was hooked to the front of that work trolley, and it would come up Bloomfield Avenue and sweep the snow off the tracks. And if it really got heavy, they had a V-plow that they would put on front of that trolley to clear the roads. So that takes care of Bloomfield Avenue in the snow. We also had another thing on Bloomfield Avenue, where the post office and Jack's Luncheonette is right now. There was a garage, a large garage here, run by a man named Applin, Ray Applin, and he was probably the only good mechanic in the area. And after a while, I don't know exactly when it was, where the Subway pizza sandwich place and the Krausers, those 3 stores right there, Ray Applin put up a large garage, a very large garage, which housed buses that a man by the name of Garrity operated. And he would keep his buses in that garage also when he did his work. Now, Mr. Garrity lived on Personette Street over here, and he ran buses that would take on weekends when they had visiting up at Overbrook. It was called the Essex County Hospital at that time. His buses would run people getting off the trolley, going up to visit people up there. Tim Garrity's bus line had a scheduled route that he ran there, and he would keep his buses in Ray Applin's garage. And another thing that the garage was used at least once a month. They would move all the buses and when cars were in there out, and they'd set up a boxing ring in the garage there, and they'd have professional and semi-pro boxing bouts. As a matter of fact, Eileen's sister, one of Eileen's sisters, was married to a boxer. An old family in Verona. You probably heard people mention them, the Vitalis. There was the Vitali market. Well, Lou was handy with his dukes, and he was one he was one of the regulars on when they ran those boxing matches in there. And I guess Tim Garrity would rent his bus out for other occasions, but he ran that back and forth. Then we can start up at the Route 23 end of Bloomfield Avenue, and after the White Castle was there, and then a diner group of people from Newark, the Baumans. At one time they owned what was called the Week Point Diner in Newark, a very famous place. They come up to Verona, they bought out the White Castle, and they built a large diner on that corner where the auto agency is right now. And it was called the Claremont Diner at that time. The Claremont Diner, famous for their cheesecake. That was the big item, right?
Oh, the hamburgers.
Yeah. But Eileen's sister's husband owned a tavern in Verona here also, right opposite the park. This tavern's no longer there. It was called Sherry's. And
was Hirsch's to begin with?
Yeah, Hirsch Solomon owned it, and Sherry bought the tavern from him. And at that time, when they changed the parking regulations on Bloomfield Avenue, at one time you could park anywhere on Bloomfield Avenue. There were no and then they changed it to where it is now, westbound traffic, no parking on this side, and it sort of disrupted the people. Always stopped for it, and things didn't go too well. So Sherry sold his liquor license to the Claremont Diner. So that's why there's no longer a tavern in that location. He sold the liquor license. It was Morris, and I forget the other Bowman's name, but they were brothers. They were famous in Newark at that time. And At that time, there weren't many taverns in Verona. I could name
One
them.
that
There
was recent. What was the one?
Pardon?
The one up from the across from the park up.
Healy? No, you mean Morley's.
Morley's.
Morley's. Well, that's closed now too. But there were only there were 4 taverns in around at that time. I'm talking about the 30s right now, up to 39. There was where the Verona Inn now is. A man by the name of DeBella owned that. And then where the Garden Apartments are now, where Vitale's Market used to be, right opposite the Regency there, there was another tavern there called Tommy Sarah's. And then there was Morley's. And then the other tavern was up where the, what's his name, owns right now. What do they call it?
O'Neill's.
O'Neill's. Healy owned that tavern. They're the only, and the one that Sherry had at that time, Hirsch Solomon owned that one. And they were the only taverns. As a matter of fact, there are less now than there were. There's only, the Regency has the liquor license, O'Neill's has a liquor license,
Is that all?
and the Verona Inn. They're the only ones in town now, right?
Yeah, the ones by the park closed.
They're the only ones in town now, right? So, coming further on down Bloomfield Avenue, there wasn't much there. Of course, the old standby, remember Henry's Deli. We all know about Henry's Deli. But as far as, well, let's take the police department that I can remember of now. There weren't that many in the department. I still
Chief
remember.
Coffin.
Well, this was before Coffin.
Before him?
Yeah, we had on Grove Avenue the Chief Rowland, Harold Rowland.
yeah.
He was the chief of police. He
He
lived on
practically
Grove
owned it, yeah.
Avenue. Just 2 houses up from where the synagogue is now is where the house is still there. He was a chief. The top of Linden Avenue up here, we had a man by the name of Johnson, Ray Johnson. He was a lieutenant in the department. On DeWent Street, the first house coming off of Bloomfield Avenue, on your left-hand side coming in, there was the sergeant. His name was Ben Czar. And then we had birds.
I think it's just rain.
No, I could see a rainbow just over the house. See the rainbow there? Probably a little, yeah. Too bad they can't find a lot of gold at the end of it, huh? A captain, Earl Mills.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, Earl was the captain. See, a funny thing, when I was in the Navy going through, this was during the war, but I was going through the Panama Canal going to the Pacific. I was going with PT boats at that time. And I bumped into Earl in Calan, which is the eastern end of the Panama Canal. And Earl was down there with Naval Intelligence in, I forget what naval district that was. And I bumped into him down there one day as we were docked waiting to go through. And he took me around Calan and showed me all the good spots in Calan that he thought sailors might be interested in, you know. And he had a nice position down there. He was with Naval Intelligence down in that. He worked the whole length of the canal from Calan on this side over to Panama City.
He was on the Verona Police.
He was a
that.
lieutenant on the Verona Police. Well, he became a captain, I think, when he came back home there. And there isn't that much more than I can think about when I look up and down Bloomfield Avenue. What's there here now? I know the original post office, you probably had people tell you, was in where Janet's Realtor is now. That was the first post office that I can remember. And then in that group of stores where the Lakeside Deli is now, there used to be a dry goods store. And that was Scheinblum. That's right. A family by the name of Scheinblum owned the dry goods store there. And then right next to him is where Jules Terry had his first drugstore. He was in there with he had a soda fountain in there, and that was his first location in Verona. Then you come up a little further, the next one, there was a man by the name of Amsterdam. He had a little meat market there.
In the newspaper business?
Well, he didn't have the newspaper business, was in where the sport shop is now. The fella that I used to carry when I was a youngster going to school, carry newspapers, a guy by the name of Balk, he used to have a newspaper business where the sport shop is now. Mm-hmm. So I used to deliver newspapers in the morning before going to school. I went to school in the old building, which was demolished, where they have the monument there now. That was the grade school. We went to grade school then, and then into the Henry B. Whitehorn School. And I guess you've had numerous people tell you that the high school was named after Dr. Whitehorn. Yeah. And I could still remember some of the teachers. I had a Maud Conway when I was in grade school. I remember her. She was pretty good. And in high school, the one teacher I remember was a Mr. Dimmers, wore glasses, and he had less hair than I have. I remember him quite well. But with the police department, there was someone else, Jimmy Aiello. He was also, I think he was what they called a chanceman. He wasn't really a fully sworn-in patrolman. But I can remember one of the patrolmen that was, I think, the only policeman killed in the line of duty in Verona was Ted Braun. Ted lived on over here on Personette Street. Ted Braun, he was killed, I think it was a rainy day, going down Bluefield Avenue on the motorcycle and got caught in the car tracks. And was as a result of his injuries, he passed away.
Where we had the trolleys then on Bloomfield.
On Bloomfield, yeah, in the trolley tracks, yeah. But that's about, because then I went into the service in 1939, and we really didn't come back. I really didn't come back into Verona. My family was here, though, my brother and mother and father, until we bought the house in 1952, and we've been in here and raised our family here in time. We had 5 children. They all went to Our Lady of the Lake grade schools, and then they went to Verona High School in Verona. And my one son, Kevin, I guess he holds the record of kicking the first field goal for the football team. What's his name? What's the attorney's name? Matt. But he did an article. He wrote a couple of articles in the Verona News, and there was a big piece in there. I cut it out and gave it to Kevin, so he's got a memo of that. But that's about all I could tell you. That from then on, you've probably had people. There were too many to be able to tell you what happened in the 1930s in town. Another thing I remember now is out at the lake. At that time in the 30s, we had a canoe club. It was called the Verona Canoe Club. Did anyone ever mention that?
Yeah, I think I heard that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they used to have contests. At that time, almost all the places around with lakes had canoe clubs. And they would compete against each other. That had 2-man races, 4-man, and then they had a jousting contest to where in the front of the canoe they had a little platform, and one man would be in the front on that platform with a pole, just as if you were knights jousting, and the object of the deal was to knock your opponent off into the lake, and that was a big thing that went there. Another thing I think of is the Verona Fire Department, and I had to get this plug in now. Verona has the best fire department, rescue squad, and police department around. I can't say anything but 100% excellent, right? We've had occasion to use them, and they're the best. They're the best, and anybody in town should support them in any way they can, whether it be financially or just pass the word around and tell everybody what a good deal they do. the fire department at that time, a lot of volunteer fire departments around, they used to have fairs, contests, each fire departments, they would go around. And Verona used to hold theirs in back of the middle school, they call it now, on that field there. And they would have I know on the north side of the racetrack there, they used to dig a big pit, a large pit, and put the coals in, and clams and corn in the husk in there, and they would have that going for a day, you know, when they were doing it. I can remember that. That was fun. Another thing they used to do, they'd had the grease pole climb. They would put a pole, something similar to a telephone pole, in the ground, and they'd grease that pole and put a flag on top of it. And the idea was to get up, and whoever got up to the top and got that flag was declared the winner. But those are things you don't, you know, doesn't happen anymore. I don't know whether everybody's liability conscious now, I guess, and they don't want to go into that. But they used to have all kinds of, you know, different departments competing against one another. Who could hook up to a fire hydrant the fastest? Who could get the ladder up in the air the fastest? But it was all good competition. But I guess that's about all I could mention or talk about. Is there anything
Sherry
you can think?
Callahan was on the fire department.
Yeah,
wasn't
Eileen's sister's husband was a volunteer fireman, right?
For years.
For years he was on the fire department. He was, I would say he was on there 25, 30 years at least, right? Yeah.
O'Neill and who else?
Yeah, there's quite a few of them. Of course, then I remember all the old ball teams, the Verona AC. You probably had people tell you about them. And they used to have a clubhouse underneath where O'Neill's deli is now. There used to be bowling alleys under there at one time. And the AC used to have their meeting rooms in there. But they used to play, they had a good league here, the Essex County League, with all the towns. They had all very good ball players here. We had, I can remember one of the high school players, Tex Hyder was a catcher. He went up as far as AAA, I guess. He played with a team, Butler in Pennsylvania at that time. And they played, the ball field at that time was where, on the field, the ball field that they have at the middle school now, AC used to play their all their ball games there. As a matter of fact, they even had stands, covered stands, that were there at one time that they played. So it was good, but things have changed.
Mike, don't tell me they never beat Bloomfield.
No, well, yeah, they might have. Oh, well, Verona didn't. At that time, Verona didn't have a football team. I don't think. I think my brother George was on the first football team in town. That was about. It had to be just before the war, because my brother went into the war in 19.
Service when he was young.
Yeah, when he was young. I guess right after the war started, he went into the service. So, but he was on the first team that Verona had. Prior to that, they didn't have anything. I used to play, I guess.
The Verona AC or whatever?
No, we had our own club.
Yeah.
Terry Dean probably mentioned to you. He said something about my kicking ability or something. But we used to play in back of the high school. Teams from pickup teams from all around, and we had a coach by the name of Dox. He was a coach from Verona, a great athlete, and he was our coach.
About him.
You heard about?
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of his first name. This was before Nelson and all that crew, the old crew. Doc Gelswell, he was still active, I guess, at that time, but. That's about it that I can think of that would be of interest. After that, when I went into the service, I sort of lost track of everything until we came back, and we're greeted right now with some rain, the much-needed rain.
A few drops.
So, is there anything you would like to say, Eileen?
Not
Other
really.
than the-
Not really.
Other than the fact that we're both World War II veterans. Eileen was in the Army and I was in the Navy.
Well,
No.
thank you very much.
You're quite welcome.
I
It's
learned
our
a lot.
Pleasure. It's our pleasure. And I hope some people that are interested in the history of Linden Avenue and a few other places can glean a little education
Oh,
from it.
well, must have had some history there, Mike.
Well, the parish didn't start till 1924, I think. The parish
That's
first
okay.
came. Yeah, when the bridge opened. Yeah, but they had here's another little piece. At the county police patrolled Verona Park, and a man I worked with, Father Carrollton, his name was Butch Carrollton, and at that time they had the police cars, motorcycles with the sidecar, and.
Drove one?
Jim Carrollton was
Oh,
telling
take the kids for rides on the...
well, he used to take Father Mike Kelly. Father Kelly was the
Oh,
pastor
yeah.
at that time, and he
Father
used to
Kelly's cane.
and he used to take Father Kelly for rides around over to the park in his
Sidecar.
motorcycle.
Motorcycle.
Yeah. That was, Jim was telling me, a man I worked with for a number of years used to be. Eileen and I were both, incidentally, worked in the corrections field. I was the warden up here in Caldwell, deputy warden for 30 years. And Eileen was a sergeant in the women's division up
Being
there.
retired, I had passed the lieutenant's exam.
Yeah, Eileen was
Dodo
retired.
bird, retired.
So I'm retired.
So what do you think about all that changing, all that going away?
Well,
Yeah.
what
It's a
they
shame,
say.
but they're all down in
It's a
Newark.
changing world.
Yep.
It's a changing world.
It's a
Things
changing
come
world
and
for
things
them
go.
too. They didn't know how good they had it up there. That was a country club up there compared to.
Yeah. We got
Where
out
they
at the
are in
right
Newark.
time. We both retired in '83, so we've been retired quite a few years.
Right.
Okay, so with our retirement, I think we'll retire. Now that the rain is coming down, a much needed rain.
Very good. Thank you.
Okay.